I do want to bring up this because it's also backed up your point regarding the international community pretty much coming out against sanctions. And the reason why I may explain this is because I want to explain why I am so against the United States empire and why we are building an international leftist coalition so we can fight the U.S. empire, because this is something that people in the world sees as a great evil. People see the direction of U.S. capitalism. People see the direction of U.S. imperialism as a great evil. And we did an entire panel about the evils and the sexual depravity of the Catholic Church. But so to be fair, I do want to bring this up because the new Pope, who I don't necessarily have a high opinion, I don't have an opinion one way or another, he has been good on a few issues and challenging a lot of these Christian hypocrites. Now, he came out recently with a statement essentially condemning global capitalism and global U.S. imperialism. And he also massively condemns the sanctions, what we are talking about right now. So I'm gonna read his statement. So once again, I believe I can be nuanced. We have a lot of criticism of the Catholic Church, but this is good. What the messaging that this new Pope is putting out is good inherently. I don't know if he's a hypocrite, but I care about the messaging first and foremost. So this is his plea. I'm gonna read this out and I'm gonna get to the story of Saul. I think this is very relevant. He says, in the name of God, I ask financial groups and international credit institutions to allow poor countries to assure basic needs of their people and to cancel those debts that are so often are contracted against the interests of those same people. I also do want to highlight that usury laws that the capitalist class has embraced, right? They put an entire working class into debt. That is something that is strongly against the religious tenets of the Catholic Church, of Protestants, of Judaism. This is something that capitalism has blinded religious people of caring about. It actually spoken about in the Bible a lot. You're not supposed to have debt and wage slavery like we do now. But anyway, I'll continue with the statement. But that's why he says that. He says, in the name of God, I ask arms manufacturers and dealers to completely stop their activity. This is him essentially calling the end of militarism, the military-industrial complex as we know it. He said, I ask manufacturers and dealers to completely stop their activity because it foments violence and war. It contributes to those awful geopolitical games which cost millions of lives and displace millions of lives and leaves millions dead. Right? So this is already powerful. And I'm going to give you guys a reaction here very soon. But this one is, the next paragraph is the one that's relevant to this discussion. I argue all of this is relevant, but he says, in the name of God, I call on powerful countries to stop aggression, blockades, and unilateral sanctions against any country, anywhere on earth. Any country, anywhere. Not except socialist countries. Not except Venezuela. Not except Russia. Any country. No neocolonialism. Conflicts must be resolved in multilateral fora, such as the United Nations. We have already seen how unilateral interventions, invasions, and occupations end up, even if they are justified by noble motives and fine words. So once again, that's a great statement by the Pope. And this, you have conservatives, neoliberals that are in shambles, like especially ones who are loyal to the Catholic Church. After he sent this message and many other, he sent out a lot of messages that directly contradict neoliberal capitalism. But this one was very strong, very direct, and here he directly rebukes sanctions. Do you guys have any reactions? Then I want to get to the next part of this. I'll open the panel real quick.
I mean, I was just going to say he just sounds like an anti-imperialist, right? Like that.
He sounds like a crazy. He sounds like a crazy Antifa, far leftist, radical. Anyway, I'm gonna move on to the next one because this is what Assal mentioned. So I think
he sounds like an actual Christian, which is weird to hear from a Pope, you know.
Yeah, I have said many times I don't have faith, and I said many times, like, even though I had a lot of criticisms of religion, the way people maintain a religion, when you listen to people like Dr. Cornel West, right, who's really religious, I have no problem. In fact, I find his faith to be very inspirational in a way. You know what I mean? But then you have people who use the religion to, like, oh, we're gonna discriminate against gay people. We're gonna call for crusades and the death of people who believe in things different than us. And you think I'm being over dramatic? That is literally what the invasion of Iraq was. George Bush told him, the Christian God told him to invade Iraq. These are the things that they used to help sell the war. So if you think the Crusades have ended, they have not. The Crusades have never ended. Like that, people always like, that's in the past. No, it's not. It's not. You understand? Noam Chomsky wrote about this in great detail. Someone once asked him, why are there so many Zionists in America? Well, even though America is a mostly dominant Christian country, why are there so many Zionists? And once again, this not come from me. This come from Noam Chomsky. Noam Chomsky said people underestimate the evangelical hold that is on many Americans, where they see Israel as the place where the rapture is going to take place and where Jesus is going to come back. So a lot of these people who support the apartheid state of Israel, they do so because they want to purge the Muslims from the area, the undesirables. Once again, coming from Noam Chomsky, not me. That's a giant reason. That's no different than the Crusades. So
yeah, and
go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, and that's the majority in terms of a numerical majority of the support for the Israeli government in the United States is from evangelical Christians who believe that once they ethnically cleanse all the Muslims from the Holy Land, then Jesus is going to come back and he's going to massacre all the Jewish people and everyone else who isn't like a member of their exact sect. And so, that's the majority numerically of the support for the Israeli government in the U.S.
There is a church that's called the Universal Church, is an evangelical church, and every time I entered, I saw a temple because they have these massive temples with like place for helicopters, hotel, like it's a hotel inside a church temple. Every time I went in, I saw that the people there were supporting, the people that were paying for these massive temples were people that can barely afford food. And the presence of evangelicals in Brazil, it's coming to an extreme point. They hold in the House and Senate more than they are 70%. They are 70% in both. And this is like so worrisome because like the excuse of like, I am going to save you. This is always a fascist excuse because like, what are you saving me from? Did I ask to be saved? They do the same thing in the continent of Africa. But there is one good thing about that. They were kicked out of Angola because the president said like, you're abusing people's faith, and kicked them out. But they have this domination. The crusades still happen. And I think right now, I think we live in this really weird moment where we see things with our eyes and they don't care they're you're seeing anymore. They're just doing it. And if we try to go, because like when you spoke about freedom, Peter, I thought about because there's no freedom here, right? It's a dictatorship. We in the US live in a dictatorship. And I'm like, where is this freedom? I really want to find it. There's no freedom. And the empire keeps on attacking, conquering. And before, in the name of God, and now just in the name of the name, of the coin, of the power.
Well said, Josanna. And I want to say this because this has always been my take on religion. I want to call bad ideas what they are. I don't care if you get offended or whatever, but I don't think religion makes you inherently good or bad. I think religion amplifies who you already are. If you're a good person, you will use your religion in a good way to benefit humanity, and you will say your religion led you that way. And then if you are a bad person, you will use your religion to do bad things and use your religion to justify that. You know, the same way that former extreme racists used to use their religion to justify slavery, the way they used to use that to justify lynching. So that's people who are bad, who will use their religion to justify doing bad things. That's why I think it's super important to cover what the Catholic the Pope has been saying, because it exposes the people who use their religion as a shield to pretend they're good people, even though they're just propagating more bad. So we heard what the Pope has said regarding sanctions and economic war. Now I'm gonna pass it to Assal here very soon, because I think Assal was going to mention this, because this is something the liberal establishment, they always bring up regarding Joe Biden. They're like, no one talk about Joe Biden's faith. Joe Biden's faith. Joe Biden's a Catholic, a staunch Catholic apparently, and they always bring that up. Oh, Joe Biden's a staunch Catholic man. He's staunchly religious. This is your Pope, Joe Biden, telling you your foreign policy is an act of against God. Are you going to listen? No, because once again, as my thesis told you guys, the religion do not dictate whether you're a good or bad person. And I think even if you're religious, I don't think that should offend you, because if you're a good person, you use your religion for good, right? So despite all of us saying that, despite the Pope flat out like rejecting his ideology, you had the Biden administration. I'm gonna pass it to Assal so she can kind of explain, because I interrupted her because she almost got to it. Because I wanted to build the argument first. Now, over the course of this last hour, you guys realize why sanctions are ridiculous and why sanctions are violent. But correct me if I'm wrong, Assal, but you had there was holding hearings. So you said, this is your tweet. You said the Biden administration put on a show just to argue that sanctions are an effective tool. There you explain that we've been explaining for the last hour. In reality, sanctions are effective at starving and devastating millions of people, while state actors stay the same. It doesn't matter if it's Republican or Dem. Sanctions are warfare by another name. Now I'm gonna share this video. I'm gonna play this video, and then I'm gonna start with you, Saul. I'm gonna mute my mic real quick, and you can explain what they was doing to get more background, and go into your spill. But I'm gonna.
Mr. Adeyemo, with respect, my time being limited, I may already be over my time. What I'm asking is for you to identify, we're trying to learn lessons here. You've conducted a review of U.S. sanctions policy. You've identified in that review specific success stories. Please, with my remaining time, identify one or two specific examples where U.S. sanctions policy has been ineffective, so that the Congress can benefit from the review you've undertaken and deliberate how best to improve the statutes that govern these policies.
Senator, as I said, the review was focused on the idea of us looking into the future as to what we can do to use sanctions going forward. We did not spend time looking at the individual sanctions policies. More than happy to follow up with you and your staff to talk about any of the sanctions programs that you would particularly like to discuss. But our goal of the review was to look at what we could do going forward to make sure that sanctions remain an effective tool. In order to do that, we do need to address the challenges that the review found, which we have clearly articulated both in the report and I've done in my testimony today, in order to make sure that going forward this tool is effective.
Yeah, Mr. Adeyemo, we will need to meet in person, because the purpose of this hearing is a policy update on the Treasury Department's sanctions policy review. And if we're unable in a public setting to articulate or discuss any specific cases where U.S. sanctions policy has been ineffective beyond generalities, then I think we have more work to do. So I look forward to meeting with you so that we can work together to improve U.S. policy. Thank you.
I don't even know if you guys understand how ridiculous that was that we just watched. Saul, do you want to give a little background? I have a lot to say, but Saul, you sent that great tweet out highlighting the hypocrisy. There's so much ridiculousness out that clip. But Saul, you want to give some background in case anyone a little bit lost here?
So first, honestly, like, great for Senator Ossoff for actually saying something, right? It does show you that there are members of Congress who are at least a little bit more honest about our policies and that they actually have the power to question those things publicly so that the public can be informed of what's going on. So hats off to him for doing that. Most of the questions that were asked were non-challenging, right? So if you never challenge what an administration is doing, then nobody ever knows what's going on. So basically, when the Biden administration came in January, they were like, okay, we're going to do this sanctions review. And his constituents, so people who supported him, voted for him, got him into office. What was expected of that sanctions review? I mean, let's put it this way. Ideally, what we would have gotten was a fundamental overhaul of a system that is clearly ineffective, targets innocent people, and basically devastates them, right? That would be an ideal situation. That's ideal. Fine. At the very, very least, what was expected was for humanitarian impacts to be central to the sanctions review, especially in light of the pandemic. This is what we got, okay? So this was in January. It's been 10 months. It took them 10 months. It's a 7-page document. Well, it's 9 pages, but the first page is blue and the last page is blue. So it's 7 pages of text. 10 months got us 7 pages of text that doesn't mention COVID once, nothing about a pandemic. So we're talking about sanctions in the middle of a pandemic, and this review failed to mention COVID at all. There is 1, possibly 2 paragraphs about the humanitarian impact, and that comes somewhere in like page 6 of this sanctions review report. And you heard Adiyamo say himself, we did not look at specific cases. Well, great. Then what was the point of your review? The point of the review essentially was to say that sanctions were, oh, look, our sanctions are really good. They're very effective, but we need more multilateral sanctions, right? Because we need more support on them. Really, it was just a way of saying that we are distinct from Donald Trump because he unilaterally did stuff, but we're going to get our friends on board and we're all going to do it together. And it's really effective. And as a side note, we'll try to make sure that people don't die in the process. There's no clarification as to, okay, so how are you going to mitigate? There's a sentence that says, sanctions, our policy should mitigate humanitarian impacts. No explanation as to how that's going to happen. And it's clear to me, at least watching it, that this is more, again, of a sort of PR campaign that allows the Biden administration to act like they are distinct from the previous administration because the people in this administration spent 4 years criticizing the previous one, right? That's the key. If you spend 4 years criticizing someone and then you do the exact same thing, you look stupid. So at some point, you have to pretend like you're different in some way. So they had this fabulous review, 7 pages in 10 months, and nothing about how the policies are actually ineffective, which Senator Ossoff pointed out. And the reason why that's so important is because they are far, far more ineffective than they are effective.
Hey, Assal,
Sorry.
What you just said is actually very profound because this is actually a pattern that the Biden administration has done because they had to sound like they're very anti-Trump when they was running. So in order to appease like the liberal base, they have to seem like they're opposing Trumpism without actually doing it. So they did the same thing regarding the border crisis, where they said, oh, we're going to do a review of Trump's border policies. And I remember when that was announced, there was headlines everywhere. Biden's going to review Trump's border policies. Biden's going to review Trump's border policies. Oh my God, this is amazing. And then they reviewed it and they're like, oh, we're going to keep it. So you see how they got the positive media out of doing that without actually making a change? That reminds me exactly what you referring to here. They did the same thing. They're like, oh, we're going to review drug prices. Oh, we're going to have a review on drug prices. Then they did the review. Nothing changed. So this is a pattern where they always say we're going to review this, and then they maintain the policy of the previous Republican administration, thus the country continue to shift to the right. But sorry, continue, Assal.
Which is really a policy of the previous Democratic administration, and then the previous Republican administration, and then the previous Democratic administration.